All right, so let's do another part of this series. Let's see what we can actually build today. So we have this calendar, it highlights the days, but one thing that is kind of not implemented yet is when you switch months, it doesn't fetch the new results for that month. So I need to figure out how to hook in to this React component to know like when it's actually changing months. So let's go, I don't even remember what React component I'm using here. So let's go to the actual main page and go to the top, and we are using a component called React Calendar. There it is. One thing I noticed in the morning is that like harder for me to code. Just can't think properly. Guess my brain's still waking up. But let us look at this React Calendar and look at the API that they provide us. Hopefully we can find an example of when you click on a month change. So let's see, format day, format month year. Okay. And I'm assuming they have like an actual like method, because right now I'm using onChange, which says it's supposed to be for whenever they click on an item or something, right? So I think that works for what we're doing. This says on view change, on click decade, on click month, on click week number, on click year, on drill down, on drill up. So I don't know which one of these is the best one. Let's go to, maybe there's something about months. I mean, we can see on click month. I don't think this is actually going to work. Sometimes it's hard to know like what to use on an API, but let's just go ahead and see what happens if we try to call this method. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this callback function that's just going to console log the month to see like what happens, or when does this actually get invoked. So I'm going to go to my console here and click on the month, and that doesn't do anything. Let me refresh the page. Maybe my live reload is not hooked up to my backend Webpack thing. Let's go again and click on the month. All right, so that's how it changes months. But when you click on these arrows, it doesn't do anything, because that's changing year. Okay. So, I mean, that's how you do it with the month, but that's not exactly what we want. I mean, maybe we do, but maybe there's another thing we can do as well. On click day, on view change. This is probably one that we might want on view change. It looks like you'll get past keys. If you go to previous, let's just try that out. So instead of on click month, let's do on view change and see what it passes us. Hopefully we actually get back the view or something that we're on. So let's go ahead and click on the previous month. That didn't give us what we want. That's giving us drill downs. Yeah, so that's not it. I'll probably spend the whole stream just trying to figure out like what method we want. Select range, show week number, tile content, value. What is this stuff? Props, month view, year view, decade view, century view. All right, let's see, navigation. On active start date change, function called when the user navigates from one view to another using previous or next buttons. That's what we want. That's what we want. On active start date change. So let's see if we do this one, what do we get back? Yep, so previous and next, and when you get it, you get active start date. So I think we can use this to basically reload all of the data for that month. So I'm going to instead, when this method is called, we are going to call the same methods that we do for getting like all the entries. So I think it's this one. We can simply do this. And we probably also need to format it. Maybe, let's see. Date to fetch. Format date, date to fetch. There's a little bug there. I'm surprised this app was actually working. But it looks like this method already kind of formats it. And I'm going to pass month. Actually, what we need to pass in here is, crap. I'm going to put an async here. And what do we need to pass? We need to pass in. Okay, well, I just got rid of the console log, but it tells you active start date. So this should pass in an object that has an active start date. And we need to pass in active start date there. So it knows like what is the start date of the month to fetch the entries for. So let's see if I go to April, May, June. Let's add one for March. Let's just go ahead and say this is bad, save it, go back. So we have one for May, I mean, not March. June, May, June. Okay, that was kind of weird. I added one for March, but it like switched to May. Let's click on that, save it, go back, and it goes to May for some reason. That's weird. Because the day I have selected is in March, but the calendar kind of swapped back. It went to May. Yeah, so I don't know if like it was doing this before. I don't think it was. But let's just add a console log here so we know like what's going on. Maybe every time the actual like calendar loads, it's like fetching these entries back. Nope. Yeah, so I'm gonna stash. This is a good technique when you're working with your code and you're using Git. If you add changes and then something seems broken, you can stash your changes and that'll kind of like store it somewhere that you can kind of pop off later or apply later. So I'm gonna do a hard refresh on the page and I wanna see if this is the normal functionality that was doing it before, where when I click on the calendar, does it load up the month that I had selected or does it load up the current month? And it looks like every time you do it, it loads up today's date. So maybe that's the way it works. I'm gonna go ahead and do a git stash pop and that'll kind of apply those changes. But one thing you'll notice is that if I navigate here, it loads the data for June and I close that and come back, May is missing a bunch of stuff. So I need to also load all the entries for this month when I actually try to toggle the calendar. So there should be like a button here for opening up the calendar, which let's scroll up a little bit. I don't even remember. Go to today. Go calendar. So right here, we're doing this. I'm going to add some more functions here. Typically, it's kind of bad practice whenever you have like a click that's doing multiple things. The reason that's bad practice is that it's kind of better to pull that out to a function above or into a separate file so that you can like test it all. But again, we're not building something awesome for you all. But yeah, all this code could probably be refactored. Let's see if this works now. So if I navigate away from that month and come back, it crashes. So that's awesome. What I need to pass in is probably selected date here instead. And that'll grab all the entries for the selected month. And we can do caching so it doesn't like keep on fetching this data every single time you load up the calendar. But that's kind of like a premature optimization at this point. Like just get it working and then make it faster later. So yeah, I think that's good now. We can go back in time and see like all the different days, how the stuff was. We can drill down. I guess from a user experience perspective, like I guess it would make more sense to just have this calendar always open. Like I don't know why we need to toggle it. We could just have, you know, two grids, like a grid system using CSS grid, have the calendar on the left and the symptoms on the right. I need to go and look at some other apps, like how does Google Gmail do it? What is the most important feature or thing that the user needs to do? Maybe this calendar needs to be open 24/7. And as I use this more, it makes more sense. Like you want to dive back to later dates, it would make sense to have this calendar. So what I'm trying to say is like, let's go to the actual place where we have the calendar. And let's just kind of lap some stuff. We have a calendar and then we have all this other stuff, right? So in my opinion, it would make sense to have this split up into two columns. So we can try to do a grid system here. This already has a style of main, so maybe I could just find where I'm doing a class of main and just style it. All this stuff. I might have to wrap this whole thing in a div to make this work, because we got an H2 here and we got a form here. So now we have two divs, right? So it's going to either wrap the calendar, which I'm always going to display it. So let's just go ahead and delete this toggle. Like we don't want to toggle it anymore. Just always keep it displayed. And you know, we could wrap this in a div as well, because sometimes you want to add padding. All right, so let's see what happens there. Nothing really much changed, but you can go back. I mean, if you are familiar with Flexbox, I think you can change this to flex direction of row, maybe. And I think that'll put them side by side. So this looks a little bit better. There might be a way to add like a grid gap in between these flex columns, or what I could do is just add some padding to both of these. So I'm just gonna say .main and then grab the next div. I guess I could say div. Might be brittle to select the div instead of star. And I'm gonna say give me the child div, and I'm gonna say padding of 40 pixels. So that looks a little bit better. And at this point, like, it doesn't even make sense to have these buttons here, right? Because the calendar has the buttons for us and they're always displayed. So in terms of UX, like you have all these different ways for people to kind of change the views. So we could just kind of delete all of these buttons that we added. Like I know we worked hard at like getting this stuff working, but sometimes you refactor code and you realize that you don't really care about a certain, you know, approach, so you just delete it. Honestly, I think you could just comment all this stuff out and see what happens. Okay, so as you switch through, yeah, this makes like so much more sense. This is just a much better user experience in my opinion. The calendar is in charge of like showing you what day is selected, and then it's also in charge of your navigation between dates. There was an error that popped up. Anyway, yeah, so we're going to do some refactoring. We don't need this, at least I don't think we need it right now. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete any method that we're not potentially using. So like there's a show calendar, set show calendar we don't need, set show calendar. Go to the day we don't need. Don't need go to previous day. We don't need go to next day. Let's get rid of that comment for now. Yes, we don't need this icon anymore. It's always good to go back and clean up code that you're not using. If you're using ESLint or any type of linter, it'll tell you like what's not being used. So yeah, let's see what else we could probably do. There's a lot more data points that we want to like keep track of. And I need to go back and ask my wife what she wanted to keep track of. Like salt, dairy, exercised. Let me go to find that. Let's see, data points. So search for data points. That'll take us to the div that's doing that. And then what I'm going to do is just add some more. I could try to dry this up and like make this all be, you know, a map function that was pulling from some data from the top to make all these input boxes. But at some point, like you just don't want to over dry your code because it just makes it really a lot harder to manage. Let's just make some more inputs. we might have to go throughout our code base and find like where we need to add this stuff into, which would probably be a good way to dry stuff up. So did exercise. That's a checkbox. Did you exercise today? Right? Maybe exercising causes some type of flare up at a later date. So I want to kind of make sure I keep track of that. So anywhere I added this is salty. I got to go back to the backend model and say did exercise. And then here we probably want to say did exercise. We got the input box, okay. And then we got, what is this? This is where we're actually saving it. So I have to basically go through all my code base and kind of do this. So this would be a good, you see how I had to go to like 5 different files just to add another property? This is kind of a red flag to me. There's too much that you have to do to simply add a new input field. So I think we should dry that up. I don't know if I'll have time to do it in this video, but I guess we should see why this is being checked to true. Let's go back to the index. I'm probably pointing it to the wrong thing. Did exercise is a checkbox. Unchecked did exercise. Unchanged did exercise. I guess by default it's setting it to true. I'm not sure why I'm setting any of these to true. That's kind of weird. I'm also not sure why, if this is true, why is it that it's not showing up true when I check it? Let me refresh the page. Okay, so it was all true when you first went to it, but when I'm loading up data, let's see what comes back from the back end here. So the back end for this entry doesn't really have did exercise. So maybe we have to go and like add that somewhere. Yeah, it looks like we have to add it here. Make it false by default. There we go. Yeah, not a big fan of that. I need to go through this code. I'm going to set these all to false. It doesn't make sense to set these to true when the page loads. But yeah, I think that might be it for today. I'm going to think about ways to refactor that in the next video, because there is a lot of places we have to change just to add a field. So I need to like think for a little bit. Maybe you can watch me think through that process, because it might take me 30 minutes to find out an elegant way to like abstract that away. But yeah, this is pretty much it for now. I'm going to go ahead and commit this code. So let's just go ahead and run through. What did I change? I added did exercise. Okay, let's add that. On the page, I did some refactoring. I removed some stuff. Added that did exercise label. Awesome. Added this to my backend APIs. And in my home page, I added some styling. Okay. That all seems good. I'm going to go ahead and say worked on always showing the calendar, and added did exercise. Really, this should have been 2 commits. Like, this was a separate thing that I did. Should have been a different commit, but at this point, everything is kind of combined, so I just need to push it. Let me just go ahead and push that. Where's the push button? That's it. All right, well, stay tuned for the next part. Have a good day and happy coding.